The following program deals with a controversial subject. The theories expressed are not the only possible interpretation. Viewers are invited to make a judgment based on all available information.
Please, please help us. Please.
Please help us. Please help us before we die.
Please help us.
Brutality of ISIS and the ongoing war.
Major developments in Syria.
Good evening, and thank you. U.S. military officials tell CNN.
We want to live.
You want to live?
Yeah.
Every day we turn on the TV and there's more bad news. Another environmental catastrophe somewhere, or more starving refugees, or innocent victims in war zones.
It was so hard, but we were dying.
Most of us are busy trying to make ends meet in our own lives, and we see these images and feel helpless to do anything about it. I think the deep shame we feel about that is paralyzing. Certainly one of the reasons that we turn away.
8.9 magnitude. Now, we know that's a big number. It was the 5th largest earthquake in history. But you can only really understand the enormity when you see these pictures. An earthquake so strong it literally shifted the Earth's axis by about 25 centimeters.
However, we do live in a world full of conspiracy theories, and all I ask is that you keep an open mind, but question everything.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Ms. Lewinsky.
I think that gay marriage should be allowed. I do not believe that gay marriages should be legal.
I am honored to be here with Barack Obama. So shame on you, Barack Obama.
Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, these countries are tiny compared to the Soviet Union. They don't pose a serious threat to us.
Iran is a grave threat.
We can end illegal immigration. We're never, ever going to be able to totally control immigration.
You have said in the past that it was, quote, pretty well confirmed.
No, I never said that.
Okay. I
never
think
said
that is...
No, absolutely not. What I said was, it's been pretty well confirmed.
There are known knowns. There are things we know that we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things that we now know we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. There are things we do not know we don't know.
There's a couple of completely logical reasons why our politicians are so similar. The end game for politicians is to get elected. The people who vote are, for the most part, quite moderate in their views. Both parties try to occupy that middle, moderate ground. They are simply responding to that majority in order to get elected. The second reason our politicians are so similar is much more sinister. They answer increasingly to the same master.
We're looking easily at the first billion-dollar presidential election. It's much bigger money than we've ever seen in a presidential election. We define a candidate as being serious or not by how much money they can raise, not by what ideas they have, what their record in public service might have been. It's all about money. We really don't have an election anymore. We have an auction.
It is completely unrealistic to expect democracy to deliver representatives who will serve the people's interests when so much money is involved. Having so much money in politics gives all the power to those with money. Yes, we are all still allowed to vote, but how free is our choice? The media in the hands of big business will only present us with politicians that will serve their interests. It would be completely illogical for them to do otherwise. It would also be illogical to expect politicians to change a system that puts them in power. But it certainly begs the question, just what kind of democracy do we have?
Do you want to live in a democratic society, or do you want to live in the society we have? Which, remember, is not a democratic society and is not intended to be. If you take a course in political theory here, I'm sure they'll teach you that the United States is not a democracy. It's what's called in the technical literature a polyarchy. A polyarchy is a system in which power resides in the hands of those who Madison called the wealth of the nation, the responsible class of men, and the rest of the population is fragmented. That's the way the country was founded.
Throughout the history of the world, the rich and powerful have dominated it, and very few people have had any control of their own governments. Most real power in the world is still exercised by those we do not elect. We are still far from governing ourselves. The basis of democracy is the belief that we were all born equal and that that equality must be accepted by those in power. But in the attempts to win those rights, many people have been imprisoned and tortured by those who have power and were determined to retain it. No one in power really wants democracy, because democracy would challenge their power structures and their authority. So anyone who comes out with a democratic idea is dismissed as unrepresentative or a troublemaker or an extremist or something. And in this way, the full flow of a public debate about alternatives is being extinguished.
What is the proper relationship, what should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. There is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
No society wants you to become wise. It is against the investment of all societies. If people are wise, they cannot be exploited. If they are intelligent, they cannot be subjugated. They cannot be forced in a mechanical life to live like robots. They will assert their individuality. They will have the fragrance of rebellion around them. They would like to live in freedom. Freedom comes with wisdom, intrinsically. They are inseparable. And no society wants people to be free. The communist society, the fascist society, the capitalist society, the Hindu, the Mohammedan, the Christian, no society would like people to use their own intelligence. Because the moment they start using their intelligence, they become dangerous. Dangerous to the establishment. Dangerous to the people who are in power. Dangerous to the haves. Dangerous to all kinds of oppression, exploitation, suppression. Dangerous to the churches, dangerous to the states, dangerous to the nations. In fact, a wise man is a fire alive, a flame. He would like rather to die than to be enslaved.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure.
Big business is about making money. That's what big business does well. Governments, however, have to balance the needs of the whole society, including big business, based on ethics and social and moral responsibility. But if our corporations have become more powerful than our governments, then we have to understand the effect that is going to have on our systems.
Corporations are artificial creations. You might say they're monsters trying to devour as much profit as possible at anyone's expense. The 14th Amendment was passed at the end of the Civil War to give equal rights to black people. And what happens is the corporations come into court, and corporation lawyers are very clever, and they say, oh, you can't deprive a person of life, liberty, or property. We are a person. A corporation is a person.
These are a special kind of persons which are designed by law to be concerned only for their stockholders and not, say, what are sometimes called their stakeholders, like the community or the workforce or whatever.
I believe the mistake that a lot of people make when they think about corporations is they think, you know, corporations are like us, have feelings, they have politics, they have belief systems. They really only have one thing, the bottom line.
All publicly traded corporations have been structured through a series of legal decisions to have a very disturbing characteristic. They are required by law to place the financial interests of their owners above everything else, even the public good.
That's not a law of nature. That's a very specific decision, in fact, a judicial decision. So they're concerned only for the short-term profit of their stockholders, who are very highly concentrated.
So the pressure's on the corporation to deliver results now and to externalize any cost that this unwary or uncaring public will allow it to externalize.
Please, please help us. Please.
Please help us. Please help us before we die.
Please help us.
Every living system of Earth is in decline. Every life support system of Earth is in decline. And these together constitute the biosphere that supports and nurtures all of life, and not just our life, but perhaps 30 million other species. The typical company of the 20th century. Extractive, wasteful, abusive, linear in all of its processes. Taking from the earth, making, wasting. We're leaving a terrible legacy.
Today, the effects of pollution and industrialization have multiplied tenfold, and the damage is terrifying. And yet these same corporations still want to drill for oil in the Arctic. And that's not just morally blind, that's morally bankrupt. Also, corporate expansion into other countries to get those resources is the cause of so much war and conflict, as you will see in this film. We need our corporations to bring us the technologies, many of which already exist, that can help us address the issues we face. And yet, the system encourages a thirst for short-term profit.
Knowledge does not believe in birth control at all. If you know one thing, it will drive you into another thing. Because each question answers, and 10 new questions arise. Again, the same will happen. 10 questions answered, and you have 100 questions ready for you. It goes on spreading. It becomes bigger and bigger, and you are lost into it.
I know many of us have heard stories about powerful groups of businessmen who pull the strings of governments from behind closed doors. And so many rumors have sprung up around organizations like the Bilderbergs and the Council on Foreign Relations that it's really difficult to know what to believe. However, it is an interesting fact. The Federal Reserve Bank of the United States is not actually owned by the government. It is owned by a private banking cartel. Now, whoever these men are that can loan money to governments have to be some of the most influential men in the world, and yet we don't know who they are. Not all conspiracy theories are just theories.
Are you still giving out orders like Memorandum 200, where you said depopulation should be hell? Sir, just a question. I'm not going to go to hell because Memorandum 200, sir. Memorandum 200. Just ask them a question.
At the same time, we're in danger because of their designs on the internet. This could also be the high watermark. It really depends on who stands their ground and what the fight will be. Because, of course, we've just broke last week. People from the European Commission, the Dutch woman Neelie Kroes, wants a mandatory internet ID for Europe. Cybercom was launched only 2 years ago. We saw the Stuxnet virus, admittedly engineered from the U.S. and Israeli and other related allies to use against Iran and so forth. On that pretext, they want to take greater and greater control of the web. The United Nations also trying to have a reach over the web.
The Bilderberg Group include many prominent members of the internet and computing world, including National Security Agency Director and Chief of the United States Cyber Command, General Keith B. Alexander, co-founder of Facebook, Chris Hughes, founder of PayPal and chief Facebook investor, Peter Thiel, executive chairman of Google, Eric Schmidt, founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, co-founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, vice president, European Commission, commissioner for Digital Agenda, Neelie Kroes, chief research and strategy officer, Microsoft Corporation, Craig J. Mundy, and many others.
More and more, we're seeing the iron curtain of media censorship on Bilderberg and the shadow government, shadow elite, pulled back. So we're seeing Bilderberg basically try to pass the baton off to younger people right now, a bunch of tech folks, Google, Facebook, and others, hoping that the police state tech grid can protect their criminal activity. They're trying to push a global bank as the solution to all our problems that they created. They're openly trying to push more police state systems. They want to end internet freedom. They want to bring in internet IDs.
The mainstream media is no longer mainstream. The alternative's taking over, and they're trying their damnedest to either restrict or shut down the free internet as we know it right now.
The increase of internet-based media has been closely correlated with the decrease of traditional forms of media, such as newspapers and television, which have been monopolized by members of the Bilderberg Group.
I understand that. So what about the depopulation? I mean, Memorandum 200. Why are you afraid to talk about your depopulation plan?
Why don't you get lost?
Why should I get lost? It's serious.
Sick person.
Sick person? How am I sick? You're the one committing.
If we are to make decisions about the future of our society, the single most important thing we need is the truth.
How do you feel about secrecy in government?
So I would like us to imagine a nightmare scenario. A powerful group of businessmen with access to the White House who control the media and who make obscene amounts of money whenever there's war.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
President Eisenhower's concern about the military-industrial complex, his words have unfortunately come true.
They have weapons of mass destruction. That is what this war was about. And Saddam Hussein possesses biological and chemical weapons. The fact that there are weapons there. You've heard the president say repeatedly that he has chemical and biological weapons.
With the drumbeat for an attack on Iraq increasing, the Bush administration may finally have the ammunition they've been looking for.
September 11th.
September 11th. September 11th.
September 11th. September 11th. Dangerous world. A grave new threat. There is no doubt that he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies.
Well, a militia group linked to terror being backed by Iran and setting up camp on America's doorstep?
The propaganda campaign waged by the media was so successful that by 2003, opinion polls showed the vast majority of Americans believed Saddam Hussein was linked to 9/11. This claim was false. The majority believed he possessed stockpiles of weapons of mass destruction. This claim, too, was false. These claims allowed the corporate interests and the administration to frame the attack on Iraq as a justifiable act of self-defense. The great heroes of our times, people like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, incredible though they were, could not create change on their own. Only the will of the people can do that, and together we can accomplish anything.
It's vitally important that you understand this because this gives you ultimate power to change the world you live in. Companies are extremely sensitive about you buying their products because if you don't buy their stuff, they go out of business. That's not something any company is willing to consider. And by choosing to spend your money wisely, you can promote those companies that do business in a socially responsible way.
Without saying a word, you will have sent a clear message that they simply cannot ignore. It will be heard, heeded, and acted upon, guaranteed. This is real power.
For example, if a company pollutes the environment or uses bad business practices, if you don't buy their stuff, they will change. If you don't want food with chemicals or GMOs in it, then don't buy it.
One has to cleanse oneself every moment because dust tends to gather on the mirror every moment. It is a natural process. While you are sitting here, the mirror in your bathroom is gathering dust. Even in the night, when nothing is happening, even the doors of the bathrooms and the windows are closed, still some dust is gathering, settling on the mirror. Because dust particles are there in the air itself. In the morning, you have to cleanse the mirror every day. One has to be even more alert about the inner mind, the inner mirrors, the inner capacity of reflection. Each moment you have to cleanse the dust. I prefer to put it in this way. Each moment, a sannyasin has to die to the past and be born anew. Then he remains transparent. Then his mirror remains clear. Then there is nothing to obstruct his perspective. Then he is not a Christian, nor a Hindu, nor a Mohammedan, nor a Buddhist. Then he is simply a mirror. Just a mirror. A mirroring. Mirroring all that is within and without. Out of that mirroring, wisdom is born. Wisdom is the flowering of your transparency, of your translucency, of your luminous being. That's what we are doing here. In fact, the function of the master is to undo what the society has done to you. It is an anti-university, anti-school, anti-college, because it is not to depart knowledge to you, but to impart something totally different, something of a different dimension. It is to create a triggering process in you so that you can get out of your so-called scriptures, words, theories, and you can become just ordinary. You can just become whatsoever you are, without any pretensions. I exalt the ordinariness of consciousness. I am not teaching here you the Superman.
This is the 21st century. If we use our resources wisely, there's no reason why anyone shouldn't have what they need. There's no reason whatsoever why people are still starving to death on our planet. And the common man or woman, whether they are Israeli or Palestinian, Protestant or Catholic or Iraqi or American, the common man just wants to live in peace and justice in a clean environment. When we look around the world and we see that that is not the case, we know that the will of the majority is not being listened to. That's the first sign that our system is broken. Government won't make these changes for us. Yet again, it is down to the common man. Please don't just watch this movie and turn away. We can fix this system.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.